You're attending, in case you are confused, you're attending a public hearing that the BHS, there's so many things going on in Town Hall, I just want to make sure you're straight now.
In the right place.
BHS Expansion Advisory Committee, and these are some of the members, and we'll go around and introduce ourselves in just a minute, but I just want to welcome you. We're going to have a presentation, and we welcome your comments. We're going to take the processes, we'll do that. We'll take a week to give people a chance to write written comments to us. And then next Wednesday, May 3rd, we will have a vote on our preferred option. And tonight we're focused on the high school. We're not focused on options involving traffic and parking and, you know, that kind of stuff. And the recreation facilities. We have a lot more process to go through on those items. So you may see a couple slides in there. They sneaked in, but on those issues. But basically, we're focused on the additions to BHS itself. Okay. So I am Nancy Heller. I am one of the co-chairs of the committee from the Board of Selectmen.
I'm Susan Wolf-Ditkoff. I'm currently the chair of the school committee, and I'm a co-chair of the BHS expansion committee.
My name is George Cole. I'm a member of the building commission, and I am also a co-chair.
My name is Bobby Bagel. I'm a member of the advisory committee and the town meeting representative from Precinct 10.
My name is Ian Rothman. I'm a parent representative.
Nancy O'Connor, I'm on the Park and Recreation Commission.
Dan Bennett, Building Commissioner.
And I'm Nicholas Gersten. I am a student representative from the high school.
Who lives in the neighborhood,
And
I
a
might add.
neighbor.
We tried to combine our representations. Okay, so why don't we get going here? The architects are going to present.
Actually, before we do that, I think Ben's gonna.
Okay.
I just want to show folks in the room here where to get all the information from the district website, including tonight's presentation, but all previous presentations, upcoming meetings. So this is the district website. You'll see a building projects tab right here, and if you click on that, you'll see night school or BHS. You can pick either one. We'll obviously go to night school by accident. But in terms of BHS expansion, so there's, let me just do one thing here. There's a few different pages here. On this first page, you'll see this is an overview of where the process is, but importantly, email a question or comment, this link right here. So you can do it by speaking tonight. You can do it by written tonight on the slips of paper. You can also do it electronically, up to you. You can give comments electronically as often as you like. The building committee will see all of those. And then other pages are schedule of upcoming public meetings is right here. There'll be some more added as we go along. Importantly are the summaries of the current of all the past meetings. You'll see on this already we have tonight's presentation up on the website, and these are, if you want to get caught up to other previous meetings, these go back for months and months and months, and all the presentations are there as well. And then the last page is simply just a very short listing of just the presentations and studies. So there's some redundancy there. We want to make sure you have easy access to all the information. So, one thing I did miss quickly was, it's on both pages, but I'll show it to you here. Sorry, and go here. Is if you haven't already, you can also sign up for have notice of any upcoming meetings and summaries and updates we have on that first page as well. That's all.
Okay, so the architect's going to present the options, and then we'll have questions and comments. And when you do make a question or comment, we'd appreciate it if you would state your name and your address.
Sorry.
And this is Pip Louis, who is leading the architectural firm at HMFH.
Yes.
And this video link, well, this is getting videotaped by Brookline Interactive Group, and so videos will be available if you have neighbors or friends who might want to see it who can't be here tonight. They usually do a pretty good job in a few days of putting up the video link, so we can put that on as well so people can see what the link, or sorry, the Brookline Interactive Group website will have this presentation.
Okay, and I am trying to get this to show up both places.
While they're fiddling with that, I will also let you know that tomorrow evening, the school committee will be holding a second public hearing. There were so many meetings tonight and so many meetings this whole week that we ended up scheduling 2 public hearings so that for people who couldn't come tonight, they could come possibly tomorrow. So that's at 7 o'clock, right? In this room.
Well, I'm, as was said, I'm Pip Louis from HMFH Architects.
Can you stay near the microphone? I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Or just
I was
maybe even push out the podium or something a little bit, but just stay.
I'll just stay back here
Okay.
in my corner.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I forgot it was being broadcast. So I'm Pip Louis. I'm an architect, a principal with HMFH Architects. We're located in Cambridge, and we really focus on the design and building of K-12 public schools in Massachusetts and around in New England. And we have been involved with this Brookline High School study. And what I'm going to do here today is to show you, first give you a real quick overview of the number of options that we're looking at. And then I'm going to look at the options in a little bit more detail, followed by with a description of what's in the various options, and then that will be followed by a summary of the options. So you'll see the options, and then you'll see the options with their costs associated with them. And this is on, this is going, okay. So first, the campus. This is the existing campus. The things that we'll be looking at are the main high school campus located right here, the Tappan Gymnasium, the UAB, the Unified Arts Building, which is located here, and along Tappan Street, we're looking at this piece of property, which is 111 Cypress Street. This is Cypress Street, located here. As a possible expansion area. You can see the Green Line trolley track going along here. You've got Tappan Street, Davis, and Greenough Street that the high school is located on. So the first option we looked at was an option that shows and these are just massing models, really. They're not designs of the building at all. But it was to take the wing of the building that is located on the corner of Tappan and Greenough, which has a parking lot associated with it, and to remove that wing and put in a larger academic building so we get a space to accommodate this growth that we're anticipating from about 2,000 students up to 2,700 students. We also show here a small academic addition in the courtyard of the existing building. And then we looked at that was option 1. Option 2, which goes a bit further, and in addition to accommodating the classroom spaces that we needed, that option 1 does, it takes the move of taking out, located right there is the Schluntz Gymnasium. Schluntz is your competition gym. And so we're replacing that with a 4-story academic building. So that in this option, we're adding a variety of spaces, additional classroom spaces, collaborative spaces, additional performance spaces, and things along those lines. But by taking out the Schluntz gym, it requires us to go across to the Tappan Gymnasium and do some extensive renovations there in order to create a new competition gymnasium at the Tappan gym. Then under option 3, we go even further, and we take step by step, because this all has to be done in a phased way. we take first that wing located on Tappan and Greeno, and we build the new building very much like we showed you in option 1. And then we take out the Schlunch Gymnasium and build this. And then as a third phase, we actually take out the administration building in the middle and add on there in order to step by step, because we can't relocate too many students all at once, to create a significant new facility. This option is the largest of the options, and it's attempting to incorporate sort of all of the things that the Brookline High School's educational plan has incorporated, and including a new theater, which is located in this space in the courtyard here, and a large field house, which explains why the Tappan Gymnasium, in addition to having that additional competition gym, also has that large box on top, which is a new field house, a large 25,000 square foot field house. Then we looked at option 4, and option 4 has actually 4 options. So option 4, and yeah, sub options, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Option 4 does take the move of saying, well, let's purchase 111 Cypress Street and build a new academic building located on the corner of Brington and Cypress. And 2 of the options show this either staying on exactly on parcel on 111 Cypress Street, and 2 other options will show it actually bridging across using air rights across the Green Line track, so it's actually fronting on Tappan Street. Then you will find there are 2 other options having to do with how we're managing a science department sort of recreation in the main building. And I'll go through that. So the 4 options of option 4 are really just the 2 combinations of 2 options here, the new academic wing, and 2 options here with science. And I'll explain that as I go through it. This is another one of the options of the 4 options, and I'll go through those in a bit. Okay, so with option 1, as I said, we're taking out the classroom wing. Sorry, I've got to go back. That's why I don't like this pointer, because it advances half the time. So I'll take out. All right, so we're taking out the existing classroom wing that's located there. That's where we're building our new academic space, most of it, including some there, in order to accommodate the enrollment growth that will occur as we grow from 2,000 students to 2,700 students. Just to show 2 representative floor plans of that, you will see this is the first floor plan, and you can see the new construction located here. If you look there, that's the outline of the existing building. So you can see by incorporating the area of the parking lot, we're actually getting a lot more buildable square footage here. And then we are expanding the cafeteria, which is located currently underneath the auditorium, which is located here. Some new classroom space facing into the courtyard, still leaving most of the courtyard open. And then it's a 4-story building, and this is just showing one of the representative other floors. You can see in red, we're always showing the science cluster in red. One of the important things we wanted to do was to give the Brookline High School really a modern sort of science facility, and a new library located on the renovated top floor of the Schlunch Gymnasium. In option 2, as I said, we take that same theme, but we go a little bit further, and we add additional academic spaces, additional collaborative spaces, and some of the additional specialty spaces. And I'm not going into detail on these things, but you can see that this portion of it is very much like option 1. A larger academic building. Again, it's 4 stories high. The science wings clusters here, and a new library here. But the difference is that this is actually where Schlunch Gym is currently located. This is actually a new 4-story academic building and contains new black box theater, new music spaces and things like that, in addition to some additional classroom spaces and the new library. Now, doing that requires that you do some work at the Tappan Gym because you have lost the competition gym there. And I'll show you Tappan in just a bit. This is option 3, which tries to incorporate everything that the Brookline High School education plan has looked for, which includes lots of additional collaborative spaces, a new library, a new theater space to augment the auditorium, in addition to black box theaters and things like that, and this large field house that's located at the sort of hovering over the top of the current Tappan gym. The floor plan of this, although this is done in 3 phases to accomplish the whole thing. The first phase is similar to what we've been looking at. The second phase replaces the Schlunch Gym, and then the third phase fills in to create this large, actually, I think this is a 5-story facility here. The courtyard gets utilized as a new sort of dining commons and theater. Hovering above that is a new library space that sort of spans from the front of the building to the existing back portion of the facility. You can see the science clusters in the building. Then if we look at the option 4s, this is the way this new academic building that's built on Cypress Street would be massed in both options 4A and 4B. Remember, it's 2 different options for this academic building, and then 2 different options for the science department. This is the one where we're staying entirely on 111 Cypress Street, and the only thing that's spanning the Green Line tracks is we're proposing a wider sort of pedestrian plaza so that the students don't have to just walk around the existing sidewalk to get up to the building, but have a wider area to work with. And the intention is that we'd be creating really a unified campus between this new building and the rest of the existing campus. Just down the way a bit is the Unified Arts Building, followed by the Kieran Pool, followed by the Tappan Gymnasium and the main building. And so by placing this here, you're sort of really reinforcing the sense of a Brookline High School campus that addresses the sides of the cypress field in the middle of it. And here you can see in the section, you can see the little trolley cars going through and the approximate scale that the building would have. The floor plans of this, these are just diagrammatic floor plans, show a sort of a ground level plan, which is located at the Brington Road level, what we call the first level, which is actually located at the top of Cypress Street, located here with that pedestrian plaza I talked about, and then academic spaces rising on the second through the 4th floor. So it's actually a 5-story building located there. Then options 4C and 4D have a very similar space program for this academic building, but it does take the move of stretching the building over and across the MBTA tracks. So you've got some air rights negotiations and things along those lines to work with Mass DOT to work out the details of this. But one of the things this does is we're trying to bring down the scale of the building here on the corner of Brington and Cypress, and it places the facade of the building really right on Tappan Street, right on the Cypress field. So looking at the floor plans of that, you can see that students commuting, walking up and down Tappan Street are now able, rather than walking all around to here to enter the building, they're actually able to enter the building at this point and then go up a floor and cross the tracks into the academic building. So this really does a better job of incorporating the building itself sort of into the existing campus to ensure this sort of sense of a unified campus with the free flow of students between the various buildings of the campus. But does require some negotiations with the MBTA. Then if we go to the main campus, the other thing that we're doing in this in these option 4s is we're redoing the science department. Science at the moment is located in 23 mostly undersized science labs that are located on the 3rd floor of the main building located here. One of our first charges with this that we were given was to make sure that we improve the science department. So as we build the new academic building on Cypress Street, that building will include 24 science labs are required for the facility. That building will include 6 of those science labs, which leave 18 to remain in the main campus. So we're taking the 23 existing, if you will, and making them larger because they're undersized for the most part, or actually in all cases they're undersized, and replacing the 23 with 18 classrooms. Now, as we did that, we found that 18 science labs. As we did that, we found, and we did our counts of classrooms, that we were shy 5 classroom size spaces. And so we're showing the need for a very small addition that's in that parking lot that's on Tappan Street right there. There might be other solutions to that, but we just wanted to make people assure that our counts show that we're shy 5 classrooms. You have to add a small addition to accommodate that there. And then what it doesn't show here, but shows in the section, is a renovated science department that stretches along the 3rd floor, approximately where the current science department is. This shows the floor plan. The red is the new footprint of science up on the 3rd floor. Each of those is bigger spaces than they are right now, but there are fewer of them, so it takes up about the same amount of space as the current science department, because 6 of them are located at on Cypress Street. And then we're showing these 5 classrooms down on the 1st floor located there. All of these option 4s create a new academic facility on Cypress Street, and then they redo the science department, and other portions of the building receive some amount of renovation, but remain pretty much as they are. I just wanted to make that point. Now, this is what options 4B and D are doing. And again, this is entirely related to the science department. And so what we're doing is, rather than renovating science back into larger science, we're creating, and I'll show you the floor plans in just a second, a new series of science clusters on 3 floors, wrapping around a portion of that existing academic wing. And then we're using this space, which used to be science, and just renovating those undersized science rooms into regular-sized classroom spaces. To show the floor plan, you can see this space here. The gray shows the portions of the existing wing that are left in place. The red shows our clusters of science. This occurs on 3 floors. I just have 2 floors here to show a representative space. what this does, because it creates sort of a triangular space, we're able to make use of this space in the core of the triangle, located right there on the 3 floors. One we're proposing is the relocated culinary arts program, which is located right here now, which has a student-run cafe. That cafe might be located right here, with the kitchen located here in this sort of courtyard space, so it becomes a more pleasant, sort of attractive space, and something where community members might want to stop by and have a cup of coffee or a sandwich or something like that. And then as you go up through the building, that is open to a skylight above. But this space here in the existing building is remade into a maker space. And so what we're doing is we're creating these 3, because it's 3 floors high, STEM clusters, which was something talked about in the education plan as wanting to sort of establish. Then the old science program on the 3rd floor, this is the 3rd floor plan, gets renovated into classrooms without really moving a lot of walls and things like along those lines. And we're showing because this area has some very large chemical storage rooms and prep rooms and things like that, that maybe we can use those for sort of learning common spaces and some of the common collaborative spaces that were also talked about being desired. Now, I want to turn attention to the Tappan Gymnasium. Most of what we're really focusing on here is the academic building, and so I'll just go through Tappan quickly. And we have different options for Tappan. One is a renovation to the lower 2 levels of the facility, and we just had a meeting with Recreation and Athletics. So we're talking about doing a little bit more sort of renovations in the spaces. So if you look at the floor plan here, you've got basement, 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, if you can follow me. The existing building, you've come in off of Tappan Street. You have a fitness center here, and you have a really sort of a large complex of underused or even at times completely unused locker rooms. So we're imagining redoing this space as an extended, sort of unifying it with the fitness center as an extended sort of wellness center with some administration and training areas located to the rear of that. Possibility of opening the lobby of the Tappan up to the lobby of Caring, so that you get the person who sits at the desk at Caring giving sort of eyes on that space, and just sort of recreating that space to make it look more, act as a more inviting space. We have, and then down below, we're in underused spaces again. We're reconfiguring the locker room, new locker rooms down in this space, and putting in some new training spaces. Now, up above that, where you have 2 gymnasiums, and on the top floor you have the tennis pavilion. There's also a mezzanine located there. We're just in discussions about the level of renovation that we would try to do to those to sort of bring them up to standard and make sure that the mechanical systems are working properly, so that after you finish this work down here, you really have a building that's going to be secure and operational for a long period of time. We then looked at what would happen on options, if you recall, option 2 and option 3, where we were taking down the Schlunz gym, and we had to recreate a competition gym inside of the Tappan gymnasium. And so what we're showing here is in the space, the sort of void space between the Kieran Pool and the tall Tappan gymnasium building, is creating a new practice gym located in the middle there with new locker room spaces and things like that down below there. And then taking the 2 gyms that are located on the second floor here and recreating them as a big new competition gymnasium. So this is the second floor plan. This shows that new competition gymnasium with bleachers. This shows the new practice gymnasium located next to it. Down below, you have a new space for locker room and entry, and then some renovation to the tennis pavilion located on the top floor up above there. That's made a necessity, essentially, of option 2 and 3 because you lose your current competition gym. And then the last option we looked at here was the sort of the full build out where the education plan asked for a field house and 25,000 square feet with a 200-meter running track. And the only way we could figure out how to get something that size on the campus even was to take that Tappan gymnasium, go to the top of the Tappan gymnasium. The tennis pavilion is located right here, and to sort of take the walls of that down. When we saw that if you extended the floor of the tennis pavilion over toward the carrying pool, that you would actually go over the top of the carrying pool. And you could straddle the sides with columns and so that the carrying pool will remain in operation while you're actually building this almost like a bridge structure up above. The floor plan of that, you'll see this looks very much like the floor plan of the last option with your competition gym located there. But the big difference is that where you had just the tennis pavilion located here, this extends out over the pool. That's the footprint of the pool there with a running track and multiple basketball courts. Now, to talk about what's in and what's out of the various options, we determined that what was needed in each of these options was, any of the options, was between 90 and 98 classrooms. And the reasons why it's a different number depending on the option is a detail that I don't need to go into here. And this just begins to talk about option 1, 2, 3, and then the different versions of option 4. I show option 4 broken into 3 parts because this is that building on Cypress Street. And whether it extends over the tracks or not, it's exactly the same educational program, same number of classrooms and things like that. So I just listed it once. And then these 2 lighter versions are what happens to the science department. This first one here is if you renovate the science department into fewer larger science labs. And then the other is if you build that new STEM wing sort of on the corner of Tappan and Greeno. You can see that in each case you wind up with 24 because you have to add that 6 to that 18 or that 6 to that 18. 24 new science labs. This option, the science labs are renovated science labs up on the 3rd floor. These are the new science labs clustered on Greeno, on the corner of Greeno and Tappan Street. There's other various revisions that I won't go through in great detail, but as you go through this, you can see sort of different numbers of existing classrooms that remain and new classrooms that get added and built for the new facility. The last part of this is going to be a little summary of the costs, and you'll see that there are very different costs with these different options. With where you're building 58 new classrooms in option 3, that option where you build all the way across Greeno Street, you'll see that that's a very expensive option, and the options vary sort of greatly in cost depending on which one you do. Now, this continue to look through the options and the different sort of spaces, you can see that as in options 1, 2, and 3, these are collaborative spaces. these sort of maker spaces, small group rooms, learning commons and things like that, that one of the major differences between options 1, 2, and 3 is how much of this sort of new collaborative space sort of focused on small group learning, flexible types of learning, hands-on learning for students. And we really have to, as we work on this, have to right-size that to what the town, what the school actually needs. The school is actually doing some experiments right now with collaborative spaces so that they'll get a sense for what works for them. It may well be that this one just has too many spaces and they can't use them. And we'll be looking at that as we go ahead. And then you can see the difference in option 4, where basically the new building on Cypress Street has new small group rooms, makerspace, and collaborative learning spaces. Whereas in the main building, when you're renovating the science department on the 3rd floor, it's really the existing to remain. And in the other option, where you're building a new STEM wing, you're getting a couple of new maker spaces and collaborative learning spaces. Usually you have a either renovated library or an expanded library. When we're building the facility on Cypress Street, for instance, if it's for the 9th grade, we would be building a satellite library that would handle that grade cluster there. And that would allow the existing library to remain as is and be serving fewer students. Same thing with the cafeteria. With that new facility over on Cypress Street, we're building a satellite cafeteria. We would bring the food over. The food would be prepared at the main kitchen. It would be brought over to a serving kitchen, which would allow the cafeteria at the main building to remain as it is. And then the main thing that we're looking at with career education technology is the culinary arts program, because that was being sort of recreated in several of the options, whereas most of the CTE things are existing to remain with some renovations over in the Unified Arts Building. And then with the visual and performing arts, you can see that options 1, 2, and 3 had different amounts of new performing arts facilities. The option 4 has a new music facility, not a theater or something like that, but a sort of a music or chorus room located in the new facility, whereas the rest is existing to remain. You've got some new practice rooms and things like that. You've got a new art studio there, even though mostly these art studios would continue to be in the Unified Arts Building because it's a great facility at the moment. And with phys ed, we talked about the various approaches to the Tappan gymnasium, and the changes there is whether there's the slunch gym is taken down in these two options as it is, or whether it's the existing slunch to remain, and then what then goes on in the Tappan facility. Now, to summarize all those options, this shows the summary with the costs, and you get a little synopsis of the option up there, and the project costs down there. So what this is attempting to be is the whole cost of the project with all the soft costs, which includes the hard cost is the cost of construction, so it includes that, and then it includes other costs that you will incur, like architect's fees, the cost of surveys, the cost of geotechnical work, hazardous material abatement, and things like that. Also, buying furniture for new facilities. So that's all wrapped up in there. And because these estimates are being done at an early stage based on these sort of diagrammatic schemes. You should really see these, we've been calling these sort of order of magnitude costs. It's a way of judging one option relative to another. The actual cost will turn out to be, and it looks like a very specific cost, but we know that it's not a terribly specific cost at this point. And as we go through the next phases, we would fine-tune the costs of the preferred option that we work on. So you'll see that option 1, which just replaced the wing on Tappan Street in Greeno, is $180 million approximately, where we also take down the Schlunch Gymnasium building and build a new academic building there. And that price grows up to $212 million. However, we're showing option 2 with Tappan because you're taking down that competition gym, you have to recreate it there. And that pops the price really all the way up to $271 million. And then the option 3, which builds all the way across the front of Greeno and incorporates all of the spaces that are requested in the education plan, including the large field house. That gets you up to $348 million. We then took a look at option 4, which came up a little bit later. And you'll see that all of these options are significantly less expensive than those options because the new space that we need, besides the renovation of science, the new space that we need is all being built on this piece of property out here. It's also kind of easier to accomplish because you're building on a fresh piece of property, essentially. So you can build this classroom space while classes and students are circulating around the main campus, really without any disturbance from the new construction. Then once that gets built, you can easily use this to essentially to decant spaces out of here into here for your overflow, because your population is increasing, and B, to empty out portions of the building to either renovate them or to build new. Yeah, these costs do not include the cost of acquisition of the site. Yes. Yes. Yes, exactly. And you will see that they vary from $105 million to $136 or $137 million, depending on which of the combinations that you do. Now, then we have a separate slide showing specifically the costs of the Tappan Gymnasium upgrades, because while in some of the options they're required because you lose the Schlunch gym, in other options it becomes a sort of an optional as to what you do and how far you go with it. Now, we just had a meeting this morning with recreation representatives and athletic department representatives, and looking at this option here, because these are, as you can see, these are all very expensive options. This one is significantly less expensive, but we talked about taking the scope from that and increasing it a little bit so that we're making this number, which is $13 million, somewhat more than that, but not approaching these $50, $60, and $70 million numbers, to really give us a better bang for our buck rather than just a sort of a minimal sort of upgrade. But we're really taking each of the gyms and upgrading them. But we're not adding space, adding gymnasium spaces like these options show. And so we'll be looking at that, but we just really talked about that just today. And then we also are looking at, as Nancy said, we're looking at some options for improving the Cypress field and circulation and parking around there, which we're really not focusing on at this at this effort here right now. Oh yeah, we're so used to the red line. There's a like a 6-foot diameter sewer line that runs diagonally through the playfield right there. It comes down Greeno Street, cuts through the playfield, cuts across the parking lot and across the Green Line tracks and goes out to Brington Road. And it's significant because it has an MWRA easement, so that obviously you can't dig there, you can't build on top of it, and it is a very large thing. So you also really can't practically talk about moving it. So as you plan anything for this field or for the parking areas that are adjacent to it here, you have to keep the idea of that red line in mind. So we always have it there, so we never forget that it's there and try to put something on it or something like that. And that really is the summary of the presentation. That's a summary of the various options we're looking at.
No, it's not. Okay, so we're going to open it up to questions and comments. What I want to say first is, and I probably should have said this in the beginning, so that you understand the arena in which we're working here. This is a Brookline High School Expansion Advisory Committee. And we are advising, we're looking in detail at the options, and we are advising the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the building commission, which are the 3 agencies in town charged with the school committee is the using agency, the building commission handles the actual construction and are concerned about that, and the building department, and the Board of Selectmen is also concerned about things like the putting an override on the ballot and the questions and the projects that the town is doing. Now, this option 4 will involve eminent domain. That has not been costed yet. We cannot cost it until we have a very detailed appraisal, which we have started to work on, and it's going to take probably 3 months. It's very detailed. It's meant to inform us as to the basically what's called the pro tanto offering price, and that will be the basis of our eminent domain action. We will, which we will file in town meeting in November. And so we don't, as I said, we don't know the cost yet, but we will, and that'll have to be built in. So with that said, I also want to make the point that you know, we're the agencies, the three boards involved are in charge of the public money, basically. We're asking the public to fund this project. This is clearly going to be the biggest project we've ever done in Brookline, and so we do want it to be based on a compelling need. We certainly have a compelling need in terms of enrollment. We have a compelling need in terms of a science wing. It's really substandard right now, and we have compelling needs in some of the other educational facets. So I'm hoping that the committee will be able to come to a preferred option next week, May 3rd, and we will love to hear your comments and understand your concerns. Did you want to?
Yeah, no, the only other thing I would say is that there are a number of options on the table, only some of which we're going to be voting on next week because others still need more process. So I think what we're going to be voting on next week is options 1, 2, 3, or 4, We're not going to be voting on a Tappan option, yes or no, or what flavor. We're not going to be voting on a Cypress Field option. We're not going to be voting on parking options. Just so that folks know, those each need a lot more work and thought, but we need to at least start with the buildings and where the pieces are going to be. And the other thing I just want to say is that these are massings, which I'm not an architect, so it kind of looked like, wow, that looks giant and sort of ugly, and that's all it is right now, is a box. It's just sort of roughly how big the box is going to be. It's not how pretty is the box or things like that. And so, at any rate, I don't want anyone to think. I just want people to be clear as to what these things are and aren't. So, okay.
Okay, so we have a sign-up sheet here, and then I'll open it up to anybody who wants to speak. Susan Vishner. Hi.
Can you come up to the microphone? I'm sorry to ask, just because.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
want to capture you on TV.
Thank you. My name is Susan Vishner. I live at 88 Tappan Street. If you've parked next to the high school auditorium, you've parked in front of my house. So obviously I have a tremendous concern. I'm going to frame my remarks by telling you I spent 20 years on the PTO. I have a child who's a CTE teacher. All my kids are graduates of Brookline High. And I have another son who's studying to be a science teacher in a high school. So please don't misconstrue. We are huge advocates of public education. But we're feeling under siege at the moment. You're going to replace a 3-story building on Tappan Street with a 5-story building. I invite you to come to my home and look at the shade potential. I have only so much light filtering through. Some years ago, when the high school added air conditioning units, which are basically the height of a 4-story building, it did negatively affect us. And a 5-story building is going to take away most of the light in the front of my home. Now, I'm thinking you probably are not trying to thumb your noses at us on Tappan Street, but it feels like building out to the curb and 5 stories up is going to have a huge detrimental effect on my everyday living. And I'm sorry for that, but I think there's got to be some kind of solution that allows my house to get light, and my neighbors' houses, and the people who are going to be on the other side as well. We're not the big part of the town, but there are enough of us. It's really problematic. I am concerned, I know you're not talking about the parking garage, but I'm also concerned, and many of the neighbors would be concerned as well, about the volume of traffic that we already face day to day, and the difficulty in using our own driveways, and the number of people who are already at the school without any kind of abatement or real plan. We would be concerned about emergency vehicles. We would be concerned about usage, and we would just be concerned for the safety of students, which is, after all, why Greenhouse Street is currently closed. And I won't go into anything else, but I, later down the road, would have concerns about the management of this process, the access to our homes. Some of us have been there over 30 years and do remember the last renovation, and there were times when we really couldn't get to or from. So that being aside, I'm concerned not just about the massing, but the massiveness of what's going in there and how it affects the neighborhood. And I'm hoping that you'll have solutions, and obviously I'm looking to be a fan of option 4. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Debra Rivers.
Hi, I'm Debra Rivers, and I live at 175 Davis Avenue, and so we are abutters of Cypress Field. And I understand, but when I signed up, I thought we would be able to ask about Cypress Field and the potential developments there. My question is, what is that process, and how is it tied to the whole development? Because there's really a fragile balance between the neighborhood and the school. And we've lived in our house for 30 years and have tried to be good neighbors to the high school, and so far it's worked out pretty well. There are inconveniences, but this is a big increase in the number of people, the number of cars, and that sort of thing that are coming to that part of town. And so I just would like to understand what the process is for the related developments, because there are some real environmental aspects as well. We lived there during a flash flood outburst where the sidewalks on Davis Ave were 2 to 2.5 feet of water. So it's a natural bowl there for collection of water. And there are also air quality issues that result in that area. So that's my question. The process and the timeline for the related developments.
Right. Well, obviously, in terms of the traffic and parking, we need to heavily involve the Transportation Department and the Transportation Board. We're having a meeting, a preliminary meeting really with them. But we also need a traffic consultant. And we will be hiring a traffic consultant. And the next part of the process is called the schematic, feasibility 2 and schematic phase, which begins in July. Town meeting needs to vote the money for that phase, and then more of these issues are studied in depth. And presumably we'll have a traffic consultant who will advise us about traffic and parking. The Transportation Board will want to weigh in. We'll have public hearings, and so don't feel like this is your last chance.
And then I guess also related to that, the proposal to have artificial turf on Cypress Field. I understand that really Park and Rec is the purview for that field, not the school department. So I'm curious what that process will be.
So again, we will have a process involving Cypress Field. Parks and Rec will be heavily involved in that. Erin Galantine will be heavily involved in that. She's a staff member of the Director of Parks. Pardon?
Yeah, the only other thing is, so Cypress Field the pieces of this are owned by different owners, and so Cypress Field is under the control of the Parks and Rec Commission. So that's something that the Parks and, I don't know if you want to say anything, but that's something that the Parks and Rec Commission has a process that they do for all of their properties when they're looking at making changes to it. And so they put together a committee. It's got different stakeholders. There are neighbors and residents. And there are many constraints on that property, some of which are environmental, some of which are historic. So anyway, there's sort of a lot going on there, and I think all of that is going to be taken as one whole piece. And so Nancy O'Connor, who's our Parks and Rec Commissioner, I don't know if you want to say anything on it? Okay.
There's really nothing to add to that. It's reinforcing the same process that they use for all of their parks will be done. So if you're used to that process, that's the process they'll be engaging.
The design review committee will convene and have the
They'll
same
be
process.
engaging their normal process. That won't be short-circuited as part of this building project.
Right, does that answer your question?
Sort of, but because it's very alarming to see the presentation from April 13th with this 300-car garage as looking like it's all linked in together. Because that was not made clear. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend that meeting. But
And I think it's fair to say that no decisions at all have been made about a garage of any sort, one way or the other.
Okay. All my environmental friends here. Kathleen, where are you? Kathleen Scanlon?
She was here.
I just saw her read.
Okay, we'll come back to her. Scott Murphy.
Scott was here and he's left.
Oh, he's left too. Okay. Well.
Anybody else?
Okay, sir, please. And give us your name and your address.
I'm Tom Clasby. I also live at 175 Davis Ave. I just want to add one related thing onto what Debra asked and see if this is something that needs to be considered in the process of your choosing a scheme. My question is whether there's any study underway that would accommodate some of the parking that's needed for the school within the use of the site on at 111 Cypress. Because otherwise it seems as though you may be baking in a need for parking that could be accommodated if you were to study a way to handle some of it at that site.
Well, as I said, we will have a traffic and parking.
But that's after you've made a choice of which scheme. My question is whether your schemes for alternate 4, any of those
Right, it is
should
true.
include parking as a part of the program there.
There's at least a couple of the sketches of 111 that include underground parking at 111 Cypress. So that's kind of what goes in, that all as a concept goes to the next phase, which is schematics of actually figuring out what it would mean, what it would look like. So there's at least one of those that's in the mix.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. That's okay. So I knew,
So
told
many
you,
to
everybody
choose
laughed
from.
at me when I said you're in the BHS meeting now.
My name's Nick Peterson. I live at 87 Greeno Street, so the other side from you, next to the other auditorium. And so I missed the beginning, but it looked like the 4th schematic would take out that gym and put in a new building, I think, all the way across. Am I right?
Yeah, that's option 3.
Yeah, and would that be the 5-story building that would be next to my house?
No, I think that Susan Vishner was talking about the building at the corner of Tappan
In Greeno.
in option 4. In option 4, there's some subsets, and one of the subsets is to build. Sure.
I think I can clarify because the
Please come to the mic. I'm really sorry.
I'm
Please
sorry,
come to the
yes, I'm
microphone.
May I?
Sorry.
So I believe, I hate to put words in your mouth, but the 5-story building you were maybe reacting to was indeed option 3.
It's
in
options 1 through 3 on Tappan and Greeno.
Well, those were 4 stories, but they're so they're.
Yeah,
yes.
Pip, can you
okay,
put it up?
I'll go to it. All right. Okay, so this is option 4. So that's not what you're talking about. And you said I'm a fan of option 4, so I'll go. So here's a 5-story building. So here's a 5-story building that goes all the way across Greeno Street. It's by far the largest of the schemes, not only Tappan, but the main campus itself. That is indeed 5 stories high, and I think I said that there. This is option 3. If you go to option 2, it's a 4-story building. You know, it's still 4 stories. Yeah, and option 1 is also a 4-story building. So so those two are 4 stories high, and then the option 3 is 5 stories high. Option 4 is 3 floors high. Let me see if I can get there fast enough. So it's the same height as the existing Tappan building, but it does come closer to the street. Mm-hmm.
And it does make a difference. I mean, ours can't change. We're in the shade a good portion of the day where I am.
And I'm
But
not
it would
clear
be
where you
more,
are, if you can clarify.
87 Greeno.
To the right of the
Okay,
gym.
so you're like
That's
here?
That's it.
Oh,
That's
okay.
my house.
Yeah, you're in the shade.
Yeah,
You're
but
in
if
the
it
shade
went
now.
up, it would be even worse.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
So that would not be good.
Mhm. Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
So noted.
Okay.
All right.
Any more questions, or did you get your question answered?
I got my question.
Okay.
Kind of answered. It sounds like, I guess more I just wanted to be able to say, the other side has a lot of shade too. We're concerned about that.
Shade. Okay, shade and height.
Yes, in the back there.
My name's Tom Nally, and I am not an abutter, but I do have a son who graduated from Brookline High School last year, so I have a few comments in that regard.
And where do you live,
I
sir?
apologize, I came in late. I had to speak downstairs at another meeting, so I didn't see most of the presentation, but I have looked at the material online. If things have changed since that time, I might be a little off the mark. But I do want to suggest that
I'm
option.
sorry. Could you tell us your address?
Pardon me?
Could you tell us your address? for the-
Address 17 Cushing Road.
Thank you.
Sorry. in reviewing the material online, I think that option 4 is the best of what we've seen so far. And I think it makes good compromises, makes some good decisions about what should go where. I think there obviously is more refinement to be done, but I think overall it is the most economical and cost-effective. I think it provides the best construction opportunities for sequencing the construction to minimize the disruption on the operations of the school. Just in every respect that I can think of, it is the superior option to what's been looked at so far. I think some decisions need to be made as to what will happen to improve the Tappan gym. That's a little bit separate, but I think overall option 4 is good. The question of the 5-story building is troubling. On the other hand, it is a piece of the site that's available, and I think there needs to be some balancing as to how to use the site most effectively that's available, and how to accommodate as many of the desires of what was covered in option 3 in option 4 to the extent possible. I won't go into any more detail because, again, I missed the presentation, but I think there are a lot of good points in option 4, and I suggest you consider that, give it the highest consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another hand up here. Yes.
Hi there, I'm Kim Kushner. I live at 46 Hyslop Road. For point of context, I have a sophomore at the high school right now, and I have another daughter who is slated to graduate in 2022. Before I ask my question, I just wanted to do a really quick recap that Pip gave at the last public meeting, which was, if I recall correctly, option 1 just brought the school up to capacity in terms of size, but not even up to Massachusetts high school building standards. Option 2 would bring the school up to capacity size and bring it up, or at least close to, those Massachusetts building standards. And then option 3 was the closest pairing to what goes with the needs and wants of the education plan that our educators and administrators worked so diligently on over the summer. I think that's very important to consider. Regardless of what option is deemed to be the best, my question is, how much of the education plan is being evaluated with those options? Case in point, all disciplines in the plan, from English, not just science, so English, visual arts, mathematics, had a common thread, which was they needed flexible workspace with flexible furniture that allowed for collaborative learning and the ability to move that to allow for small group and individualized learning. If we leave the existing building pretty much intact, which is what option 1 is, how are we accommodating that type of move into the next phase of teaching and learning? Also, was quoted throughout that entire plan was the need to address proper heating and ventilation, which is not happening in the current building. So I guess, trying to wrap up succinctly, how much of that education plan is being evaluated as you make your decision as to what option to pursue?
So Nicole Gittens, Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning.
So one of the things that we are doing throughout the process is revisiting the education plan. We are trying to make sure that it's a living document. There are conflicts, of course, because we have a set amount of money, possibly, probably, that need to be considered. And so, there are opportunities for us to go back to the educators in the high school and say, so what if we made this adjustment, or what if we made this plan, so that we're not leaving them in a place where education is not moving forward, because that is very important, and thank you for making that point. But that we are, really being considerate of all of the constraints that are in place. But I would say that much of, and I just got an email from Anthony saying, I have some ideas about, the library space. So there are definitely, you know, it's an iterative process, and so the work does keep going back to, does this make sense? No. Let's work on this. Let's think about that. So yes, it is part of, it's being considered. It's part of that. Thank you for asking that.
Other questions? John?
Hi, I'm John Dempsey. I live at 43 Brington Road. First of all, thank you all for doing this. I mean, it's a huge, I think Nancy or Susan said, this is the biggest project Brookline's ever taken part in. And I appreciate the work that you're doing here. A couple of questions. I'm all for improving the science. I'm all for improving the English, the humanities. The cafeteria gives me the creeps. And I'm a voice for the cafeteria. I always thought that we'd be like the British Museum, and we would put a skylight over the quadrangle, and we would, all our kids would and teachers would be sitting in the quadrangle in this beautiful space, and educating each other over conversations over lunch. That's what I thought, and I assume the architects have looked at that and said, no, John, you can't do it. So that's my first comment. My second comment is, I know about the sewer line. I've known about the sewer line for the 45 years I've lived in Brookline, and I know you can't move it. But still, that parking lot, that UA parking lot, with the fourth option on 111 Cypress, I think it's going to look like a missing tooth in a mouth. It just, you know, is there something that we can do with that? Originally, years ago, there were concepts of building a bridge with kind of building a building over it so that there was access for MWRA, if they're backhoes and all, but we could still use the space on both sides and just over the top of it. I assume that's been looked at, and I assume, again, it's no, John, we can't do it. But an athletic field or something there, but I'm worried that it's just going to, it looks terrible now, and with the addition of a nice building on 111 Cypress, it's just going to look like the missing tooth in the mouth, okay? Now, I live on Brington Road, and so we're very, very interested in this project. And when Susan doesn't get her 5th floor on Greenough Street or Tappan Street, we're worried we're getting the 5th floor over on Brington Road. So we're going to arm wrestle over that. But so that is our concerns on Brington Road are the massing of the building. We're worried because we know the drainage easement, that's a difficult property. We know the drainage easement goes through there, and we can't build on that. We know the Village Brook easement goes through there, and despite the fact there's a building on it, it shouldn't be there, and other engineers and architects have said, we're not going to touch that thing. You know, we don't want that Village Brook culvert to crash down. And they're also, and they're shown on the drawings that Pip had, there's access, there needs to be access in the back there for parking and a garage back there. So we know it's a very difficult property to build on. It's not just, and we know that's just a box, as Susan said. It's just a box. It's not decorated. It's just a box right now. But we know that that has to be a consideration. What we're worried about is because of those easements, that building's going to have to be higher than any of us really want. So that's one of our concerns. The other concern is how the building relates to Brington Road. You know, services, the trash and recycling, near and dear to my heart. They have to be taken out. The food services coming in, deliveries and stuff. How will that be done? And those are all. I know those are in later on in the process, those decisions. But I want to raise them to make sure everybody's thinking about them. And how it relates to Brington Road, and how it relates to Cypress Street. There's actually a little curve in Cypress Street. Now, I'm not saying that Brookline is like Bath, England with the beautiful crescents, but it would be nice to have a building that maybe followed that. Did I just do that? No, I didn't. Oh. But just kind of, you know, these are design things. These are things that, you know, when they move on in the process, I just want to kind of raise those things. Now, I don't want anybody to laugh at me on this next comment. Don't laugh, but I would like the architects to look at a ground level, a grade level access to the building across the MBTA tracks. This is thinking, I think, out of the box, but a grade level crossing. And that is because Frederick Law Olmsted in 1885 lost sleep over what to do about Brington Road. Couldn't figure out how to integrate Brington Road with the rest of the community. He came up with 3 plans, turned them over to George Goddard's development company and said, I don't know, you pick. We don't want to be isolated by a big building there. And we would like at least pedestrian access to the high school, the MBTA, Cypress Field, because this building, if it's going to be as big as I think we need it to be, it's going to further cut us off. And Frederick Law Olmsted will be turning over in his grave, not just losing sleep. So those are some of the considerations as a resident of Brington Road. We think that the school department is a good neighbor. And so we would like the school department to be part of our neighborhood. And we're kind of trusting that you folks in your advisory role, and then later on the building commission and all, will take the neighborhood into consideration. We appreciate it. I did that. Thanks.
It's always great to have a former principal, neighbor, trash and recycling expert, historian. Yeah. Bike parade. You didn't say anything about parking and traffic. I'm falling off my chair.
It's okay.
It's
you
okay.
don't have to say it now.
Okay.
Anyone
Nancy's
else?
like, no, look at the time.
Anyone else? Would anyone else like to make a comment?
Ask a question.
Questions? Okay. So we will take your comments under consideration. We'll be talking about these issues. Yes? Okay,
Sure,
sure,
go
go ahead. Yeah, we do.
Sorry.
Sorry, going back through my notes, one more question. About 111 Cypress, option 4, if it goes that route, has there been any thought given as to the purpose of that building aside from an annexed cafeteria and some science labs? Would it be a 9th grade academic specific building, or would there be specific academic focus in that building, like the English and social studies departments, or has that been given any thought?
Lots and tremendous amounts of thought. Do you want to say anything? Deputy Superintendent?
So at this moment, some of the ideas that we are thinking about is how do we provide a really supportive and small community experience for our 9th grade students to really support and transition. But with that in mind, it's a campus. It's one campus where kids will be back and forth between buildings, kind of like a college experience, I guess. But a huge center of 9th grade students at this moment is the conversation, because we know that 9th grade students need lots of TLC and support, and I think that's a really good way to give it to them. But they'll have to take, probably world language classes in the main building. They may be in the ugly cafeteria in the main building, but it will be an opportunity for us to provide very specified support.
And they'd certainly be at the Unified Arts and at the gym.
Right,
Absolutely.
right. It's
And
not that they
all-
would be wholly isolated. I was just thinking,
No.
like, how do you choose to make it least disruptive for students who are already trying to traverse back and forth from the UA building into the main building into the gym. So, and then they're going further down the road, so.
We would hope there wouldn't be too many traversements, that, you know, that
Right.
it would be
And they're
mainly
all
for
out there in the
UA
middle of winter
building
without coats on, drives me crazy.
Exactly. But just to the point, I mean, there have been extensive conversations about passing times, like how much time would you need between classes? If it were a ninth grade academy, you would need a different kind of schedule and structure than if it were a science building. If every single science, should we put a STEM building at 111 Cypress? If you put all the science buildings there, then you've got 2,700 kids walking back and forth. If you put a ninth grade academy there, or a ninth grade, concentration, whatever it ends up being, then yes, there might be kids in an upper level math class or an upper level English language class or UAB, but you're not having massive flows back and forth. So it's integral. So I think there was definitely a conception that needs to be integrated in a campus without being completely disruptive to everything. And there are also sort of considerations around, depending on which kids you put there, it also does affect phasing and how you do it. So if you built a 111 Cypress building first, you move the ninth graders into it, you all of a sudden have a lot more breathing room for 10 through 12 on the quad, and you can start moving spaces around. So it's less disruptive for the neighborhood, it's less disruptive for the kids. So everybody seemed to be converging on this idea. Plus, there are generations of prior Brookline residents who had a ninth grade academy, loved a ninth grade academy. They remember fondly as though it happened for decades. It was a 2-year ninth grade temporary ninth grade academy. Absolutely. So yes. So all of which was to say, there's been a tremendous amount of conversation, and I think what we're all trying to focus on is what's the highest and best educational use, which where Nicole started, and then there are obviously a lot of other considerations.
One other consideration that we didn't mention yet is that if you think about the quad and the building on the quad, the part on Welland Avenue, 2/3 of the part on Tappan, 2/3 of the part coming up to Lowell, that it's brick, right? But actually underneath the brick, it's wood frame. It's old. It's wood frame. So you can't build on top of it because it's not strong enough to support anything. So people ask, why can't you just go up one floor and be done with it? That's why. And in addition to the many other reasons like shadowing and problems like that. But and also it is got code enforcement issues, not only ADA, disabilities code enforcement issues, but also seismic code. And the more you renovate over there, the more you get into the problem of, are you going to be able to change things like the seismic structure, the structure that would, believe it or not, there's an earthquake zone around here. And we may not have had very much of one, but it's there. So the question is, how much money do you have to pour into it? And that stuff's expensive, really expensive. So in some ways, moving a significant portion of the construction to 111 Cypress also has the benefit of not forcing us to put a lot of money into these other code compliance issues. We have I think it's Pip Louis and HMFH have told us that we can spend approximately $21 million on the main piece of the building there before we hit the problem of code compliance. And last time we were able to get waivers. I don't know what the situation is this time, but better not to encounter it if you don't have to. So that's an important aspect to this. That one of the reasons why 111 Cypress makes it such a better bang for the buck, if you will.
I'm just curious if anybody on the building committee wants to say anything, add anything we missed. It's been a long process. Yeah, this is very helpful. Great.
Yes,
All right.
Deborah.
I just have a quick follow-up question, and I also wanted to say that option 4 and the building at 111 Cypress Street seems to be a good option for some of the reasons you've said, and that your costs can be more controlled because you're building something new and fewer phased renovations. My question is, it's 3 months for the appraisal, so you're making a decision without knowing what the site acquisition costs are. Are you comfortable with that? Because that's kind of this big unknown.
Well, there's a certain risk, and we will have a number that we will pursue in the eminent domain process, and that process can result in litigation, which could increase our costs down the road, but it would be down the road. So we would have to pay that, what's called that pro tanto amount when we do the taking, which would be sometime after November, the November town meeting. We have to have authorization, and so we would know that cost, and then there would be subsequent costs depending upon the relationship between the town and the owner, and what happens there. So it's impossible to predict.
All right, please tell your friends to watch the video and read the reports and submit comments online. Thank you so much.
Thank you.